Well, thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
No worries, no worries. So we're currently taking part in the Trentino Opera Festival, performing in Gianni Schicchi. You're conducting. How's that been so far? You've been enjoying it here?
It's been great. We had a lovely cast, lovely people to work with, yourself as well, as a Gianni Schicchi. It has been 3 weeks, I think, and we started the 1st of July with our musicals, and then the orchestra came in last week. And they're all wonderful students, really talented and really willing to work. We had a great opening show yesterday night, together with Ariadne of Naxos. So yeah, that's been great.
Oh, awesome. Well, let's start with you. How did you get into conducting? What drove you towards that?
I started as a pianist. So I started to study as a pianist, and since the age of 4, so my background is in piano solo, to be honest with you. And then I ended up in accompanying singers when I was at the Conservatoire, where I studied in Bologna. And then I became really passionate about opera. And as you probably know, sometimes it's about the people that you meet in life. And I met several people in my path that said, you know, there is a job called repetiteur or maestro collaboratore in the Italian theaters, where you actually play for opera rehearsals and things like that. So I got into this initially, into the opera world. And I done a postgraduate in Guildhall. And there I started my first experience as a repetiteur and as assistant conductor, because I discovered that most of the duties as a repetiteur is also being a conductor, conducting off stage, conducting the singers, the chorus, cueing, and that's how I started initially. But what it really drew me to conducting has been working with amazing conductors and the score preparation as repetiteur. I've always loved to know which instrument was playing what, because as you know, we get the vocal score and not the full score.
Not the full score,
right?
With the multiple lines. And...
Yes, with the multiple lines. So you get this reduction from the full score only for 2 hands instead of 60 people. And I always thought, or I've always been taught as well, that we should be as loyal as possible with the piano when playing for rehearsals about what the orchestra really plays. So I just like to be very detailed. And the amount of work I put into preparing my score has been huge. And then during the orchestra rehearsal, I just loved the sound of the orchestra. This has been my first love, I would say, with the orchestra.
That's very cool. It seems to me, from a lot of people who I've spoken to, repetitouring is kind of a gateway drug to conducting, if you will. I know a lot of people that started off as repetiteurs and then kind of moved into that conducting path.
Well, it is true what you're saying. Also, it comes very much from the German tradition, where the co-repetitor has conducting duties. In the UK, that's what we do as well. So as a music staff, you have conducting duties. And I guess some people that just fall in love with the job. For me, it has been a slow burning love, I would say. But eventually we got there.
We got there in the end.
Yes.
What were some challenges when you got into conducting and started working with these pieces that you weren't expecting? Because I know that, like you said, you already dipped your toes in the water being a repetiteur, so you had some awareness of a lot of things. But was there anything that kind of stood out that you weren't quite expecting or you weren't ready for?
Well, I guess there are a lot of challenges. Like, yes, there is the knowledge of the score, but then there is also the people you have in front. It's not anymore just the singers, but it's a big crowd of people that they have to play together. So your role starts to be very clear, that you want those people to play together, to inspire them, to lead them, and to make sure that the stage also works well. And there are really several challenges into this, which they get solved sometimes only with rehearsing and rehearsal time. Yeah, that's I would say.
Was that an interesting transition in regards to a lot of repetitor works behind closed doors? Not all of these on show, if you will, for lack of a better term. Was it really fun getting back into the whole performance side of things again?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
It really is. It really, really is, because you invest so much time. As you know, we have sometimes 3 weeks rehearsals, sometimes we have 5 weeks of rehearsals, and then as a repetitor you step back, and instead as a conductor you go on the podium and you are really in another part of the process where you give what you have done to the audience.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely, I mean, I don't think it's about the spotlight, but it's really try to give everything you have done during the rehearsal to the audience, which I really, really love.
Oh, cool. I'm just distracted by all those lovely bells.
Which we had in Janiskiki.
Oh, it's so much fun.
Yes, we did talk about the bells in the opera.
Well, it's interesting. This is a bit off topic, but
Yeah.
we were discussing about bells in opera and how many different types there are. We have the funeral bell in Janiskiki.
We do have the funeral bell in Janiskiki. We have the bells in Bohème in the third act that they're telling us which time of the day it is, which is early morning.
Tosca's got
we have
bells.
bells in Tosca, absolutely. And this because it was just a way that for centuries the villages would communicate about the main things, not only the time, but also the weddings, death, and so on. So
yeah, it's very cool. And I don't think it really dawned on me until I came here and was just surrounded by all these bells and all these churches going off at different times too. They're not all in sync.
They're not all, and exactly because they're played by people, so that's the interesting part. So they can't be in sync.
How do you navigate giving notes to people? Do you have a process in which you try to approach things, or how you speak to people? Do you like to get them one-on-one?
It's an interesting question. So there is something in rehearsal room when you have an orchestra in front where it is important to make sure that people understand you clearly and they understand what you need or what is necessary to go together, for example. And that's quite a direct approach. But then I believe there is also certain psychology, especially when talking to singers and giving notes to singers, that can ease up certain things. I don't believe that in a way always saying, oh, this is wrong is the right way, if that makes sense. But giving images to people to try to let them understand which color you want.
Okay.
And at the same time, I'm very much aware from a singer perspective that they are on stage and you want to make sure, and I think as a conductor this is very important, that they perform at their best without insecurity. So a note has to be very well delivered from a repetitor, from a conductor, from whoever else is in rehearsal room.
That's interesting. You spoke about colors. Like, can you expand on that? Like you say, I would like to see a different color here. What do you mean by that, and how would you describe that to someone?
Well, color in terms of, for example, dynamics, I don't think always saying, oh, this has to be forte or this has to be piano is the right way. Most of the time the color, especially in opera, is given by the text. That's where everything starts. How do we usually mean to say certain things in language, with the rhythm of the language, or when we speak, it's quite normal that our voice changes color, and that's exactly the same when we sing. So giving that sort of image and saying, how would you say that? How would you relate to that? How would you process that thought? That changes a lot.
Okay. Working, particularly in this festival, where you're working with a lot of students at the moment, how do you approach that with different skill levels, different stages that these artists are all at, and that includes the orchestra, a lot of them are students as well. How do you approach that to try and get the best out of everyone involved?
Well, first of all, trying to get the best out of everyone involved is my goal. And as you said, there are really different levels. Nonetheless, I think the steps are the same in the sense, how do we approach our score? How do we study the score? How do we learn the notes? How do we learn the text? And so we really started from scratch, which has been quite interesting because the learning curve has been incredible from all the singers, and everyone eventually arrived there. And it's important when working with young singers and young orchestra players to be very patient and at the same time quite firm in about where do you set your bar, and has to be very high, I think.
Yeah, well, it's good to have a standard, I think, personally, because if you have a standard, there's an expectation there that, look, it's okay, everyone makes mistakes, but
Absolutely.
if we're aiming to be the best we possibly can be, if we fall short, we're still going to be great.
But the question is, why do we aim to be the best that we can? Is because the business, it is very competitive. And it's important that young singers and young orchestra players, they learn what is going to be in the future. And I think our role as faculty members is also to offer our experience and know and let them know what it is that is required outside.
Yeah. You spoke of your route to conducting. Was that competitive for you to make that change? Or was that something you fell into quite naturally?
It was very natural for me, I have to say, but it is very competitive because there are lots of people, there are lots of, there's quite a high level of people now at the moment, and it is quite hard to find a job, to get a job, but in my case, I'm very versatile because I do still coach and I enjoy the conducting. I still have conducting contracts coming in. So it has been a good balance in my experience, but it's not always a path that is set in stone.
Yeah, not a clear path.
No, it's not. It is really not. There are a lot of, it's a long journey in a way. And as I say, it's a business that is quite tight in a sense. There are not so many possibilities and there are a lot of people.
Yeah. Do you think having as many feathers to your bow is like a massive asset that you've had? Being able to work with the diction, work as a repetitor and also the conducting. Do you think that's been super helpful in just navigating this career?
Yes, I think it has been. It's certainly made me a better musician. Starting from the text point of view has really helped because I do try always to understand the text as deeply as possible, try to understand what the librettist has written, and then I've expanded that to other languages like German and French, or and I'm a curious person by nature, so
you said to me the other day, you said I'm a bit of a nerd with the music. So how important is that research and just looking for answers in not necessarily in the score but in other places, and like reading the context material and stuff like that? Because I know you're reading one of Puccini's analysis books at the moment.
Yes, because it's important to find details to understand what the composer wants. That's my main question when I approach a new opera: what the composer wants, why he writes, for example, a certain metronome marks. And I like to know about the background, the history of that particular piece, and then know what has been written about, and then go into the full score. And even just understanding the orchestration, the use of the bells, as we discussed, why this is happening. Or, for example, there are some places where composer Puccini in this particular case wants like a natural voice instead of a sung moment. So why is this happening? And he wants to give a sort of a shock with Schicchi. So I think it's not about being nerdy, but it's really, I think, about understanding and being loyal to the score and to the composer. So knowledge is power. I mean, knowledgeable is really important, especially if you have so many people in front of you and trying to explain to them what your process has been into this. The gesture, of course, helps, but when you have young orchestra players, perhaps they don't always know
how to interpret the gesture.
How to interpret that, or just very simply like what is Skiki about, what has happened during the Skiki plot. So, for example, during our orchestra reading, I started to run a section and we start to understand the notes and how it goes together, but also explaining what was happening in that particular point in the plot. And, you know, they had a great time, and I think that helps a lot to play better, to interpret the music, to give the color that we need.
You spoke about being integral to the music and what would the composer want. How do you navigate that with trying to portray what you want and your artistry as a conductor?
That's an interesting question. Well, I try, as I said, to be as loyal as possible what the composer wants. I've listened to a lot of recordings from several conductors, and I like, in the end, to have my own thoughts. Very simple. For example, there are metronome marks in Skiki, for instance. And sometimes I thought, well, actually here is not what I want, because I want to hear the text a little bit more clearly, because I want to just have that bite in the text a little bit more. So therefore, I have changed things over there. Or if I want to hear a particular instrument coming up more, that's my own interpretation, and that's what I try to achieve. But nonetheless, there are so many views about how to perform, as you know, the pieces that you have in front, and you cannot always agree on in one way. Otherwise, we would be.
It sounds to me like what you're saying is that you make decisions through trying to highlight a different facet of what you want to portray.
Yes.
Like you said, you focus on the text rather than the speed there. I'd rather hear the text. I'd reverses.
That's exactly what I do.
Okay.
That's exactly what I do.
And how has your process changed over the years? Do you approach an opera the same way you always have, or is it's all? No, it's a blunt answer. No.
No, that's changed a lot, and experience helps somehow. And this is quite interesting, because I was having a conversation with a colleague a long time ago, and the main process is always starting from the text. Because this is what we do in opera. We start from the text. We want people that even they don't speak Italian, German, or French, or Russian, or Czech, to understand the emotion of the text, even if they are 3,000 seats far away. So that's the first thing. So we start from that. But for example, I used to start from a vocal score. Now I start from a full score. And now I've changed again, and I start from the libretto.
Okay, wow.
I start to read the libretto straight away instead of having the notes in front of me, because as you know, how it's written down, the text, it's not in one line, and sometimes you just have to find the thoughts into this and organizing it. Just find the libretto exactly like a book. You read it, and it's a great story to have in front of you. I just research the sort of emotions, understanding of the plot, and then I go to my full score, and every day is a page, every day is, and I was having this actually interesting conversation as well about how someone once asked me, so how do you know, full scores are quite big.
They're very intimidating.
They are very intimidating. They really are. So someone with no musical background asked me, so how do you study all this? And I somehow made a joke. I said, well, I start from the first page and arrive at the end. And it's a very slow process. But this is exactly what happens. You take bar by bar, you try to understand the harmony which instrument is playing what, and I put the full score on my piano, and I just play, and I just go very, very slow.
How long does that process take? If we're working on Skiki, it's only 55 minutes long. How long would your preparation period be for something like that?
For Skiki, I actually don't know how long it has been. I think it's been about 4 weeks, I would say. And also another thing, when you have many operas in a season to prepare, you always are preparing something else while you are staging another opera. So for example, if I was doing Traviata a few months ago before coming here, then I always had my Skiki score and with me, exactly, and start to study this. And now that we are in the process of, we opened yesterday Skiki, as we said, I've started to study Vespri Siciliani, and so it goes sort of on a wheel of study, if that makes sense.
As soon as you start getting completed with one thing, you move to the next?
Yeah, but it depends, because when you go in the process of opening your score, the other thing is that, as I say, every page is very different. Every page is more, maybe one page is more dense in terms of thoughts. So maybe to study one page is going to take me much longer than to study the next 10 pages, for example.
Okay. What do you think your building blocks are for a successful opening night? Because there's a whole series of rehearsals and one-on-one work that leads up to a performance that I don't think a lot of people realize. I think some people think that you just put on the costume and go out there, but it's actually weeks and months of lead-up work.
As we said, it can vary and depends which opera house you are, but there is an average of between 3 and 6 weeks rehearsal, and it's important.
And with that, though, people come knowing the opera off by heart and prepared, and it's not, you don't learn it in those 3-4 weeks just for people who aren't familiar with
On the first day, this is what we call the music calls, which are usually about 2-3 days. We all gather together and everyone is already well prepared. Maybe people have already sung the role. So there is that. But before arriving to that 3 days, that has been a preparation early on from every single person with the coaches or by themselves. And that's their own preparation, which has happened weeks and months before. So there is that, so the individual preparation. And then even when we start music calls, sometimes it can happen that people say, I actually would like to see this in detail. Shall we just meet and have a coaching? And it's often happens with the music staff of a opera house, which they're always amazing because they can sing and play all the other parts, and the folk coach, the singer. And then after that, we start the staging with the director.
I think we're getting rained on.
I know. The beauty of being in the Dolomites. So yes, there is this, I think we should stop. Yeah,
we'll finish up here. We'll do a part 2.
Well, we've done this. That's great. It's been great.
Good. Awesome. Cool. We'll do it another time. But how funny is that? The rain's just rolling in.